Gil, can you tell us maybe why you're here, what kind of issues you're discussing with the Dockers and the Eagles?
Yeah, well, I'm meeting with all of our clubs and all of the state leagues throughout Australia. So I'm sort of on a bit of a roadshow leading up to the season, talking about our plans for the coming year, key things we're going to do, and talking to the players and the staff about any particular issues they might have. So it's been productive. We're sort of about a quarter of the way through, and probably Adelaide next.
What is on the agenda? A couple of things that you guys are looking to achieve this year, or anything that you can tell?
Well, we're working very hard with our clubs. It's a key strategic thing for us to be working hard to address the imbalances in our club structures. It's a big one, and then I get to talk specifically about the challenges at each club. We're talking about what we're doing at the elite level around match day experience, and essentially we're focusing on increased accessibility, talking to cost, talking to what we're doing at match day. Talking about some of the little things we've got going on this year. We've also got a media rights deal coming up. And what we're doing, investing in the community. And we announced yesterday we're doing a review of all our state league spend. So we're talking broadly about what's the agenda for the year.
Gillon, given you mentioned the imbalances, what's your view on equalisation and where it's at and where it may head in the near future?
Well, this year was the first year of our luxury tax, the non-player footy department cap, the soft cap. So we've got to bed that down and get that right. And we continue to talk with our clubs because it's new and it's complicated, and we've got to bed that in and make sure it works. So that's going to be a key priority for this year, is to get that soft cap working.
You get into some interesting territory where, particularly from a West Australian point of view, because the clubs are profitable, money will head east and probably not find its way back at a time when you're looking for a new economic model for football in Western Australia. Is there a danger that taxpayers in Western Australia may actually end up funding underfunded Eastern States clubs?
I think you've got to look at it holistically. I don't look at it in terms of states v states. We've got 18 clubs in our competition, and all supporters want 18 strong teams that can compete. And there is, within that, there's transfers from Victoria to Western Australia to Victoria to New South Wales, and it's an ecosystem. And I think if you start breaking that down, it gets very complicated, because there's broadcast deals and there's television markets, and it's a complicated landscape. All of our clubs participate in a national competition, and they understand the need for this. And we've worked hard with our clubs, and we've got a model that's been signed off by our clubs. There's challenges in that. But everyone broadly understands why we need it.
There's also grassroots underneath, though, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you have a view on the extent to which grassroots footy in West Australia, for example, is funded?
Well, our clubs over here, the Eagles and the Dockers, are very important to the funding through the West Australian Footy Commission. We won't do anything that undermines that. So you've got to have discussions with all parties, and it's a priority for us through the Commission to make sure that we grow the funding in the community football in Western Australia and not harm it. And we've got to make sure that we contemplate all of those in the decisions we make.
How big a challenge is it to find that new economic model, given that the circumstances change dramatically when you go to a stadium that is not actually, it's a virtual ownership situation they have at Subiaco?
Well, I think people know we're the local clubs, the Footy Commission, the AFL, are in discussions with the government. They're well advanced, been going for some time. They're progressive and collaborative, and we've got to get the right outcome in the end, and we're working hard towards that.
Gillon, you got 10 of the 23 rounds this year. We've got 5 games or more in Melbourne. Just looking at that in terms of WA, obviously a very passionate fan base here for both West Coast and Freo. A lot of the games, the teams which don't have a great amount of money, St Kilda, Melbourne and Bulldogs, they usually sort of go up north, and that. Is there any sort of investigation or anything that the AFL would look at doing and potentially bringing some of those games here, away games for Fremantle and West Coast, and having them here in Perth?
I don't think so. In terms of moving games to WA?
Yeah, so having more games here in WA, so say a St Kilda, a Bulldogs or a Melbourne, give up a home game and have it here?
No, we haven't been having any discussions like that, no.
Okay. Just looking at that though, in terms of, say, giving those sort of poorer clubs 50% gate fee here as well, make more money for the Fremantle Dockers and the West Coast Eagles, is that something that you would even looking at in the future?
No, our priority is working with the clubs and with the government and the West Australian Footy Commission about the transition to the new Perth Stadium and making that work. And as we go to an increased capacity, making sure all West Coast games and all Dockers games are selling out, and there's the right model there that makes sure that football flourishes in this state, and that's the key priority for, I guess, all footy parties over here.
How do you rate the
Mick
matchday
Malthouse.
experience in Perth?
Sorry?
How do you rate the matchday experience at Subi?
Oh, it's fabulous. I think all Western Australians know that. The Domain Stadium's a cauldron. All 16 other teams dread coming here, and it's a key to the success of football over here.
Mick Malthouse said today he thinks games should be shorter, 90 minutes or less, and thinks it goes on too long. What's your opinion on that?
I think when your team's losing, the game seems long. When they're winning well, it seems too short. We've been having some look at the length of our games. When you have 36, 37-minute quarters, I think we agree with Mick that's too long. But it's something that's been looked at this year. But in terms of 60, 80, 90 minutes, I think that's a bit short.
What do you think is the ideal time for, say, a quarter or an entire game experience from start to end?
I've grown up, and I think people have grown up with 30-minute quarters in a 2-hour game, and it's when it's blowing out to 36, 37-minute quarters. I agree that's too long, and our guys are having a look at that at the moment.
What could be
what's
done
the
to
feedback?
change it? What could you maybe restrict time on, or that sort of thing? Is that what you'd be looking at?
Well, they're looking at different things about when the ball goes out of bounds, when points are kicked between goals. The challenge is actually not taking the time away so the players are even more exhausted. So that's the challenge, is actually taking minutes out of the game that actually mean that the players are. It's not making the players work even harder than they are already.
What's the feedback you're getting from players on how close they are to the limit in terms of how hard the game is to play and how hard a season is to get through?
I think there's been a consistent message for a few years now from the players that they are almost at their limits. I think we've heard that. We introduced a second bye a couple of years ago, and I certainly understand there was no plans to increase the length of our season, because we understand this is, if not certainly one of the most taxing games and physical games in the world. Our guys are incredible athletes, and I think they're close to their limits, and we've heard that message.
Gillon, a significant amount of the money that's generated from footy in WA is rental on Subiaco. If the model changes and there is less money available, can the AFL put more money into grassroots football in Western Australia to ensure that the grassroots football and the WA Football Commission is funded to the extent it is today?
We need to make sure we have the right deal, and that's we're in collaborative discussions with the government to ensure that's the case, so that we actually can continue to have strong clubs and continue to reinvest in the community and in the waffle and the community clubs. So that's at the heart of the discussions. We're aware of the challenge, and we've got to make sure we end up in the right spot.
How do you feel the discussions are progressing with that transition to the new stadium?
They're going well. It's challenging because the government's got their imperatives and priorities, which we understand, and we're representing football, both the elite level and the community level. So they're collegiate and they're progressive, but they're challenging.
There appeared to be a deadline they were hoping to hit mid-March. Are you confident that a stadium use deal would be struck by that time?
I wasn't aware of that deadline. There may have been. We've just got to make sure it's the right deal for all parties, and that's obviously for the government, but for football. So when we get there, we'll get there. And I'm not working to a specific timeline. We have some time. The stadium's not going to come online for a couple of years, so we just need to make sure that we continue to work, as I said, in a collegiate way to get the right outcome, and that will be when it'll be.
The government clearly takes the view that Subiaco Oval wasn't maintained to the extent that they would have liked to have seen it maintained, and they believe the new stadium, given the taxpayer investment, needs to be maintained properly. Does the AFL accept that view, that there needs to be appropriate spending on maintenance and life cycle costs for the stadium?
It's an interesting question. The stadium needs to be maintained. There's no doubt about that. There's a significant amount of money being invested in this venue. It's going to be one of the best stadiums in the world, and it needs to be maintained. It's exactly what that looked like. I think it's critical to the discussion, but I don't think you should be building an asset of that quality and that beauty and not maintaining it. It's just what that looks like. How
important is it that AFL, for you guys anyway, is the first game played there rather than, say, a Socceroos International or anything like that?
I haven't even thought about that. I saw the story. The important thing is actually having the right deal and a stadium built for all Western Australian football supporters that ensures the prosperity of our game ongoing, and I'm sure we'll get there.
So you wouldn't be concerned if Socceroos got first dig at it?
I haven't thought about it.
There were suggestions today that we improve goal line technology in Perth this year. Is that right?
Yeah, both here and in Adelaide they're introducing cameras in line with where we are in Victoria. We hope that it improves things. It's still not perfect, and broadly speaking, we've got to continue to evolve our score review system, and we're working hard on that.
Or wasn't it done last year to have cameras in all the venues?
Well, last year we were making sure that we actually thought that the money we were spending was going to improve the system. We're convinced that it is, and now we're rolling it out nationally.
So what's it cost you to do that now?
It's a few $100,000.
Gillon, did you reinforce the message on illicit drugs as a result of recent events on the Gold Coast to the players
Today?
Yeah.
No, I didn't talk to the players about that specifically. We're in have been for many years in a really grown-up dialogue through multiple people about the challenges of illicit drugs, and we operate an education and a welfare model, and it's not a news story, but it's one we keep presenting and talking to our players about, because it's a real societal challenge. Our guys are not immune to it, and we've been running a program on this issue for a long time.
When Carmichael left AFL last year, you said some really nice things about him. Were you surprised to hear about these allegations?
I said them twice. Remember they played the video twice?
That's
Yeah.
right, yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't live. I want to let everyone know that. Yeah, I was certainly surprised. Yeah, and obviously disappointed. I don't have all of the details, and I think that'll play out over the coming days, and we'll know more.
Are you satisfied that the Suns players have not been implicated at all?
Well, they haven't yet. We don't have any information. As I said, there are no guarantees, but I have confidence broadly in the culture of that footy club and of our players generally. There will be mistakes. There's no disputing that, and there'll be the issues from time to time. But I say that in a broad sense, and I don't have any information at the moment. And we may in the coming days, but at the moment, as I said, it's sort of watching brief.